welcome to Short Bites, the Stephen King podcast. This is a video and a podcast episode, and it is top Stephen King short story and novella adaptations. These are my favorites. This is a solo bonus episode because I didn't schedule in the next guest on the correct date to keep this podcast coming out every 2 weeks like I had planned. And that's on me, totally on me. You may have noticed that I didn't keep the schedule over the summer either, and that was because I run two podcasts, this and the Weird Reads podcast, and I just needed to take a bit of a break over the summer. So, yes, things went a little, I took a break. We're back on a full schedule now. So you may have noticed that while the main focus of Short Bites is the short stories of Stephen King, including novellas, I also spend a lot of time discussing the man's work in total with my guests. And this was intentional, completely intentional. No one in my life really likes Stephen King, aside from Jen, my wife. And she basically only tolerates him. So I just needed an outlet to talk some Stephen King. And so while the main goal of Short Bites is to talk Stephen King short stories, that was just a gateway to have some Stephen King conversations. The goal is to make friends and to have great conversations celebrating Stephen King and his work. So, I'm wearing a shirt right now. It's Stephen King's The Stand, the original cover, which I coincidentally have the book for here. The Stand, the blue cover with the eyes and the crow staring out at you. I love that cover. It's my favorite cover of The Stand. The updated version, the unedited version that came out in 1990, I want to say 1 or 2. That one is a favorite cover too. I don't like any of the new covers, so some of the new ones are good. They have re-released a branch of Stephen King covers that are actually pretty badass. But a lot of the ones that came after, like during the aughts and that, they were just awful covers, in my opinion. I'm getting way ahead of myself here. So, getting back on topic here, to help ensure that the gap between episodes isn't too long, I thought it would be fun to list my favorite adaptations of Stephen King short stories and novellas. So stick around until the end. See what's at my number 1, because you're probably going to be surprised, maybe even a little shocked. It's an odd choice, I'll give you that, but I picked it over nostalgia and fun. We'll just leave it at that until then. So I also want to note that not all your favorites are going to be on this list. You'll notice books like The Shawshank Redemption or Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption isn't on this list, and there's a reason for that. The movie is awesome. It's one of my favorite movies of all time, but I still have yet to read that novella. Same with The Body. I haven't read that collection of novellas yet at all. I'm planning on rectifying that with this podcast. We're going to be talking about those novellas after we're done with Night Shift here. Once we're done with Night Shift, we're going to be moving on to that. So I don't know who I'm going to have as a guest on that. It's easier to get guests who are on board with short stories, but when you want to get them on as a guest for novellas, it's a little bit more difficult. I may have to just say it's okay if you read it before, as long as you remember it enough to have a conversation about it. We'll see. So those 2 stories aren't on here. Both excellent movies, and I love them, and they will probably make the list once I've read the stories. So the catch here is I have to have read both the short story and the novel or novella, short story, whatever, and watch the movie. Of course, I have to have both of them in the tank, so to speak. So there's also a couple others that aren't on the list because I can't find them to watch them. like what we've been doing and covering with Night Shift. I can't find The Mangler, for example. I went on a pretty deep search looking for that. It was pretty, it's a low budget movie, but it was pretty popular in the 90s and the aughts. The DVDs were everywhere, you could get them. But now with streaming, it's not available. It's disappointing. So things like that you're not going to see here. And it's also possible I just didn't like them at all. So leave me in the comments, or in the darkness, as I like to say, down below there. Leave me what your favorite adaptations of Stephen King short stories or novellas are. So without any further ado, here is my list. Up first, I have Hearts in Atlantis, the 2001 film directed by Scott Hicks. This, of course, has the same title as the Hearts in Atlantis novella that opens up the Hearts in Atlantis book. I really enjoyed that short story, and this makes the list because of how much I love that short story. I mean, that one hits really close to home to me. I remember reading that book at work one day, and the ending just had me in tears, and I had to go hide. This is way back in like 2002 or something like that. The movie version wasn't as good as the short story, or the novella, as is often the case. But that's neither here nor there, as I often like to say. The movie itself, like, I don't even remember it all that well. But I do remember enjoying it. It was enjoyable, but I didn't love it. Not like some of these other ones below. And to say what comes next is better, maybe in my ranking here, than Hearts in Atlantis might be telling. I don't know. I guess we'll see. Maybe I'll get some hate. I don't know. Next up is Maximum Overdrive, which is an adaptation of Stephen King's short story Trucks. And this film is 1986, and it was directed by Stephen King. This is one of my favorite schlocky horror movies from the 80s because this movie encapsulates everything that 80s horror film, or at least what was enjoyable for me in 80s horror film. I absolutely love this story. Just the way it's shot, the kind of quirky comedy, the fun gore, the fun storyline, just the idea of cars and anything electrical being possessed by whatever's in that comet that's flying over in the sky is interesting. There's some interesting differences. And I'll say up front right here that I think the movie is actually better than the short story. It is just more fun. The short story is just like, oh my God, what if this happened? And here we are being slaves to the machines that we've created. The movie goes into that as well, but it, like I said, it just has the interesting, more interesting outcomes, more interesting. And when I say outcomes, I mean the ending is more interesting than the ending of Trucks is. It's just more entertaining all around. And the gore, the gore is just it's there and it's fun. It's not over the top gore necessarily. There's a lot of blood, but you don't see any intestines or anything like that. At least not that I can remember. Very fun movie. If you haven't seen it yet, you really gotta find a way to watch it. I believe you can rent it or buy it on YouTube. I have purchased this movie, and it's on my YouTube account. And I watch it. Well, lately I've been watching it once a year, so I don't know if that'll stick or not. It's just a fun movie to watch. The next movie, I might get some slack on here for having on this list at all, because a lot of people were pissed off about this adaptation. And maybe they're right. I don't know, but I had a lot of fun with it. It's very different from the short story, and I don't know which to say is better. And it's The Monkey. 2025's The Monkey, directed by Osgood Perkins. This movie, it's ridiculous. It's got the same concept as the original source, The Monkey, found in Skeleton Crew, Stephen King's second short story collection. And this one just likes to go over the top. This one is very gory, but it's over the top gore. You can't really take it seriously, and it. Some people I think have claimed that it's kind of a mockery of the short story, and I don't think that's it. I think it's just having fun with the story. And it definitely has fun with that story. The monkey, of course, is about the, this monkey that, the ones that clang the cymbals or beat the drum. I think this one beats the drum. It's basically a cursed monkey, cursed doll type story, and it's relentless. You don't want to cross paths with this monkey, that's for sure. Next up is a movie and a short story that I like, but maybe I should have moved up the list and had the monkey down here. I don't know, but The Boogeyman. This is a 2023 film of the same. It's adapted from the same source, The Boogeyman, and it's directed by Rob Savage. This story, I tend to forget, and that's why it should be maybe lower on this list. I don't know, but I recently reread it and rewatched the movie for the Short Bites podcast, and I just enjoy it overall. It's a fun movie to watch. It's a fun story to read. I would say maybe the movie is a bit better than the short story. The main reason for that is because it's just more fleshed out. You get to follow the characters, even though the characters make some questionable choices here and there that just don't make sense, but they make these decisions in order to get the plot moving forward. So I didn't enjoy that about the movie. There's only one real instance of that, and it's basically the catalyst of what what gets the plot going. Other than that, it's a great movie, I think, but for some reason it just keeps disappearing in my skull. I forget it. And same with the short story. Although I have to say the short story, I think I like the ending better in the short story of The Boogeyman. All right, next up is a classic. Now, I'm definitely going to probably get some hate here for this one because a lot of people would probably have this one at number 1. But I have it way down here, but I just can't put it higher. The last 4, this is the 5th one. The last 4 are like top tier for me, man. And, when I do get to read The Body and Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption, I don't know how I'm going to be able to fit them in here because I love the next stories so much. And so I'm talking about The Mist. Yes, I put Mist here. Low, like right in the middle of this list. The Mist was a film in 2007, and Frank Darabont directed it. And this movie is absolutely incredible. It's a monster feature about a mist or a fog that has monsters in them. And what is better? Which is better, the short story or the movie? Man, that is a tough choice too. There's some things that happen in the short story or the novella, I should say, that I don't agree with and don't make sense. Like the main character, his name escapes me, but he ends up cheating on his wife basically while they're held up in the grocery store, and that didn't belong there at all. You didn't need to go there, and Stephen King, I think, even acknowledged that. But it goes there anyway, and of course the movie doesn't go there. There's between the same characters, there's some flirtation and whatnot, but that's pretty typical in human behavior. So there's no sleeping around, unnecessary sleeping around at that. So I guess I'd go with the movie. The movie is better, but that ending. The ending to The Mist is hard, man. I remember when I first saw it, I was impressed. I was absolutely impressed by that ending. And I've since changed my mind. I think it's because I've gotten older, and I still appreciate it for the darkness. It's very dark. But at the same time, I just don't know how necessary it is. I think I remember hearing somebody talking about this on a podcast recently, and they said they don't know if it was necessary to do that. And I kind of found myself agreeing. I still appreciate it though, but it's just, you can turn the movie off before that car stalls and still be satisfied, I think. All right, next up is 1408. a movie based on the short story of the same title. The movie is in 2007 and was directed by Mikael Hafstrom. And this movie it's bonkers. It's what I love in short stories in cinema, or I guess literature and cinema. I love it when a story loses reality and reality breaks down and becomes something completely irrational and nightmarish. In this case, nightmarish. I just love the idea. And, again, what's better, the short story or the movie adaptation? I'm going to go hands down the movie adaptation. That encounter at the beginning of the movie between Samuel L. Jackson and John Cusack is brilliant. That is like top-notch stuff right there. There's that interaction, I remember, made me sit up. Samuel L. Jackson nailed that role, being the hotel proprietor or overall manager, whatever he is. He's got some intensity to him, and John Cusack plays the stubborn, I'm going to do it whether you tell me not to or not. This is what I'm here for. I'm doing it. And of course, the conversation is, you shouldn't go in that room. Do not stay in that room. Please do not. If you're going to stay in the room, you have to sign this waiver. And of course, John Cusack's character, his character name escapes me. He's bent on doing this because he's writing a book about it, or at least it's going to be a piece of a book. And he thinks that Samuel L. Jackson is just doing that to get the hype up. Like, yeah, you're just full of shit, buddy. I'm going to stay here regardless. Move along now. Let's get going. I remember being hooked on this movie in the late aughts. When it came out in DVD, it was on my DVD player all the time. And now, when it comes on TV, I might put it on, but I haven't watched it fully all the way through in a very long time. I should maybe fix that. The last I watched it was probably about 6 months ago. It was on AMC, I think. It was on some channel anyway, and I remember watching a good half of it and remembering all the craziness that happens. It's very trippy and very entertaining. All right, the last three here, top three. In at number 3 is another movie that some people just didn't like. They didn't like the novella or short story. People don't seem to agree on whether it's a short story or a novella. That's Mr. Harrigan's Phone. Now, this is from, I believe, If It Bleeds, that collection of novellas by Stephen King. It might be just a little bit too short to be a novella. I'm not sure. None of that's important. What's important is the story. And I love the story, and I love the movie adaptation. The movie adaptation came out in 1922. 1922. That's weird. That's very weird. Speaking of 1922, that story isn't on here because I have yet to watch the movie. But I need to watch the movie for something I'll announce down the line at some point. But I love that novella. Anyways, Mr. Harrigan's Phone came out in 2022, and it's directed by John Lee Hancock, and it's very difficult for me to decide if this is better, which is better, the movie or the short story. And I think I'm leaning towards the movie because it makes more of a theme about the books that they read. Now, the story is, of course, about a billionaire who's he doesn't have anybody in his life, so he hires this kid who's like, I forget how old he is when he starts, but he's pretty young. He's like 11 years old or something like that, maybe 12. And he hires him to come over and read to him. It's not every day, but it's like 2 or 3 times a week. And so he reads to him like certain books like Moby Dick. I don't remember the books, but there's a lot of books that they read through. He does this for like years. And so while the book discusses the books that they read, the movie actually has like little titles of the book, and I really appreciated that. There's hardly any difference between, I think, the novella and this adaptation, and I think that's why I'm struggling, but I'm going to lean towards the movie here because of that one little difference. I absolutely loved the adaptation. I didn't think I would because everyone kind of slammed on it, everyone in the Stephen King podcast world. But I think it's good. Like, the short story itself is kind of like Tales from the Crypt type of story where the old man dies and he leaves a phone with him. And, you'll have to watch the movie or read the book to see why that's important. But anyways, he ends up getting like texts from the grave from the old man. And so that concept right there is very like Tales from the Crypt type thing, right? But it's so much more than that. It's about a relationship. It's about books. And that's what gets me, not necessarily the possible supernatural things that go on. So Mr. Harrington's Phone is at number 3. At number 2, this was just released. Technically, it was released in 2024, but that was at the Toronto Film Festival of 2024, and it was released in the early summer of 2025 widely, and that's The Life of Chuck, directed by Mike Flanagan. I think this belongs here no matter what anybody else says. I absolutely love this story. This comes from If It Bleeds as well. And it is such an incredible story. This story is like brilliant in every aspect, and it seemed like it would be impossible to direct, but Mike Flanagan, of course, he came in and he nailed it. He caught the story, and it's almost direct. It's almost a direct adaptation from the book to the film. Like, you could bring the book along and read along with the dialogue. A lot of that dialogue is in there in the movie. Now, what is better? I think I'm going to lean towards the source material for this, but I think they're pretty equal in brilliance. But I'm leaning towards the source material, the novella, because it's just both forms are very rare to find. Like, you don't read these types of stories all the time, and that's why adapting it was so difficult, or would have been so difficult. But I think I just have to go with the novella first, because it was the first time I was blown away by that story. I read it 2 or 3 times before watching the adaptation, and the adaptation had me in tears at points. Not big roll down the cheek tears, but I was definitely misty-eyed, and I had to wipe at my eyes a few times. It's just an overwhelmingly great story. I don't want to talk about the plot at all, because honestly, I think it's great to go in blind, other than to know that the story moves in a sort of backwards fashion. That's all you really need to know. And some of it takes place inside of a character's mind. So that sounds weird, and it entices you. You got to go read the story and watch the adaptation. All right, last here, and this I'm probably gonna get pooped on for putting this in the number 1 spot, but I don't care. This is my list, damn it, and it's The Night Flyer by The Night Flyer came out in 1997 and was directed by Mark Pavia. This movie is just maybe it doesn't belong in the number 1 spot, but I don't really care, because I have so much nostalgia and love for this film. I've watched it countless times over the I guess decades now. I actually own the DVD, which is really hard to get. It's hard to find this movie and watch it, so unless it's streaming somewhere now. But when I finally got the DVD, it wasn't streaming anywhere. I finally found it for a pretty good price, and it's in good condition, and I've watched it several times. The Night Flyer is one of my favorite vampire stories. It sort of takes from Dracula, but it puts Dracula in an airplane. Like, it's not a commercial airplane, of course, like privately owned airplanes. I forget the name of the type of airplane, but you see them all the time in like those smaller airports. And the vampire, the Dracula character, pretty much goes around hunting people who live in those or who work in those airports. And it's just a lot of fun to watch. I absolutely adore this film. I admit that it's so, like, my love for it is soaked in nostalgia, but it is a dark story. It's a good story. It's about a reporter who works for one of those awful swag magazines that you used to see, like the National Enquirer. They tell a lot of bullshit. Just think Bat Boy. Bat Boy is still making the rounds, from my understanding. I don't know, but he works for one of those magazines or newspaper. I wouldn't even call it a newspaper because that's too good of a name, but or a title. So he gets wind of these murders that are happening, and he decides to go and investigate, because he also flies an airplane, which is very convenient. Kind of silly, honestly, but he gets mixed up in these vampire killings. And once the vampire gets wind of what he's doing, he starts to fuck with him. And Richard Dees is his name, the reporter guy. Richard Dees. That's a name. And he's just, this guy is a character. He's one of those guys that you hate. You love to hate this character. He's such an asshole, but he's very interesting to watch. And that's why I love watching him go through these steps. Ultimately, he wants to do good in a sense, but he also wants fame and fortune. And that's why he's hunting this vampire so ruthlessly. But he does some shitty things while the movie is taking place, like totally screw over a young reporter who just wants to get, her toe in. And, he's just not a good guy, but he kind of gets his just rewards, I suppose. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend tracking it down. Which is better, the movie or the short story? I'm going to go with the movie because I've watched it countless times over the decades, but I've only read the Night Flyer short story a few times, and I remember it being less detailed than the movie. The movie kind of goes into more of what happens in the storyline and whatnot, at least from my memory. All right, so as I said before, please leave your own favorite short story and novella adaptations in the comments, or email me. You can send me an email at shortbitespod@gmail.com. All that will be in the links down there in the show notes. And thank you for listening. Now, if you want, you can become a Patreon member. Head on over to the Weird Readers or the Jason White Patreon. And the address for that is patreon.com/Jason_White. And I have 4 categories here, but if you're interested in the Stephen King one, I have that just for you. I call it the Dead Lights Club, and it's only $4 a month. No, it's $5 Canadian, but I believe it works out to close to $4 American. So join that for extra Stephen King content, and I hope to see you there. Thanks for listening, everyone. Keep reading Stephen King. Keep being that constant reader, and I'll see you guys in the next podcast.